We'll know to send up the red flags if they rebrand aliens as persons of unearthly origin. Then we'll know, like, oh God, here we go.
That would be fun. Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, they're not aliens. But you laugh, but in some of these circles that goes on where it's non-human.
Yeah.
It's and so that because it opens the door for interdimensionals, or some people believe it's people living at the center of the earth. Maybe it is.
I mean, that's an interesting theory, because one of the questions that actually my husband wanted me to ask you was the issue of propulsion, because obviously traveling at the speed of light, a little complicated. And so are these, let's go with these beings theory here. So like, are the beings so advanced that like Earth is like Costco, like BRB, and they're gonna like zip over here, or is it kind of like when we go on, overseas to like missions, like they're stationed here, like this is their assignment and they're already here and they're zipping around, which brings up a whole nother issue. And I know I'm doing the thing you're not supposed to do, which is asking two questions at once, but it also brings up the issue of like, if they're so advanced, then why are they letting us see them? So I know this is not really your area per se, but you definitely, as you said, hear these conversations happening.
Sure. Yeah. No, and I'm happy to kind of offer my opinion, and I always caveat it. It's just my opinion, because when it comes to anything reporting, I try to be as objective as humanly possible. But yeah, those are some. But sitting around the around the living room chatting with friends, obviously these are all things you kick around, and they're all interesting questions. To the first one, in terms of propulsion and how does something get here? So even if we're going to say that it's alien, although I would say that honestly, on the balance of probabilities, I don't know that alien is the highest, even in the quote non-human ideas. In the exotic examples, the exotic examples obviously going underneath a lot of others. Simply because, like you mentioned, the ability to travel back and forth, and the fact that people have, depending on who you ask, some people say these have been around for thousands of years, or these have been around for at least decades. At one point, do you say, well, they don't appear to be alien, they're native, they're here with us. I mean, that's a startling proposition, but they're here. But if we just isolate it to what people often claim they see, so like you just said, instantaneous acceleration that exceeds anything that we're familiar with, hypersonic velocity, acute right angle turns, abrupt stops. It's not even just the propulsion systems that we don't have. It's there's a laundry list of innovative technologies that we're not even close to, that you would be required, including the material science to handle them. We don't have the material science to handle sustained hypersonic flight. That's why the only hypersonic vehicles we have are either, is re-entry vehicles like the space shuttle, but it's coming, it's landing, they take the coat off, it's not consistent flight. Or missiles, because they just blow up. We don't care how long they survive, as long as they get to their target. But we don't have the material science to handle sustained hypersonic flight. It takes a lot. It's a lot of friction. It gets very, very hot. We don't have the energy source. We're still largely using, we're shooting rockets up. We're putting people in space on the same technology we used in the 1960s. We're firing kerosene rockets up. It's not revolutionary. And so we don't know what is the energy source. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to instantaneously just take off somewhere. But then also these things are reported to loiter for extended periods of time. So, what is the energy source there? Oftentimes you don't hear people report sonic booms, which is the sound whenever you break the sound barrier. So how is this going on? I think that's what makes it a fundamentally difficult problem, because there's so many different things that if you look at it from a scientific point of view, you're like, well, this is just can't be. So, how something like that could be coming and going, I don't know. I mean, I wish I had an answer for your husband. I wish I could tell him, and I could tell him what. I get lots of emails from people who say, well, this is how and that. And I'm like, well, that's something.
Yeah.
But I don't know. And what was the second one? Now I've gotten on a tangent about.
No, that was a great response. It was about someone had mentioned like, hey, if these are aliens and they're so advanced, why don't they turn off their high beams when they're hanging out and testing their equipment? You know?
Well, yeah, and it goes into that same unknown. And maybe the most unsettling thing is the fact that possibly aliens or non-human whatever would be visiting us, and they really don't give a shit about us.
That is unsettling, actually.
Right, and I think that's maybe to an extent, and even I've spoken to very esteemed astrobiologists or astronomers who look at that, and I think even that idea that, well, what if something was visiting us? Clearly, it really doesn't care. I mean, it's not stopping to say hello. It's not, and I don't know that would be what we would do. If we found life on a nearby planet, we were capable of traveling there, I would think that we would attempt some type of communication. There's lots of theories for that. People say, well, human beings are kind of, if you looked at us from afar objectively, we're kind of assholes. We start wars and we do everything else. If they've ever looked on Twitter, they're probably like, you know what? I don't think I want to talk to them.
Lord, if aliens get Twitter, I'm out. Like I can't deal with that. But yeah, I mean, do we as humans stop to go, hey guys, we need to talk to the ants. We need to really communicate with them. So that's an interesting point. And I love also in the first answer that you talked about the, sharp right angle turns and the propulsion and the technology that would be required to achieve the movements that we have witnessed of the UAPs. I'll probably never get used to that, which kind of ties into the second part of the report that I wanted your feedback on, because it was about measuring the data from the UAPs. It also mentions the social cultural, I'll just read it. Social, cultural stigmas and sensor limitations remain obstacles to collecting data on UAP. And I often wonder if the changing of the name UFO to UAP is their part of their solution to socioculture. Okay, let's stop making people feel crazy for reporting these. But when science wants to gather data in the deep ocean or deep space, new technologies are created to collect that. So from your, I'll call it insider perspective, do you know of any new technologies, US or otherwise, that are in development to help collect more information?
I don't know of any technologies that are specifically being under development for that. I am aware of the fact that kind of as happenstance, new technologies have been developed, and they seemingly have allowed for the detection and the increase in these sightings. Some of those technologies are I'll give you a broad overview of these just persistent pulse radar systems that are on our aircraft now. So instead of the old systems, maybe you saw the little scope that swings around, you have the big radar tower at the airport that swings around. These don't do that. They consistently send out a signal. And so they're persistent. That has seemingly led to an increase in radar detections of bizarre something moving out there. The other one is advances in airborne synthetic aperture radar. So more interesting stuff that essentially you fire a radar beam out and it allows you to render a three-dimensional image of objects. And you can use this now. They have fairly secret systems that they use this for underwater reconnaissance, because it's so sensitive it can tell from the movement of the water above water if something's moving under it to track subs. And so kind of inadvertently, they appear to be picking up other things. And now, is there any technologies that are currently under development specifically to this? Not that I'm aware of, but that I think that you're hitting on one of the most interesting parts of that entire report, though it was really short and it wasn't very specific. What they were saying was, in saying that was a challenge. There was a challenge that many of the systems that are designed for are mission specific, and these are highly integrated systems. It's not like Top Gun and it's not like World War II where these jet pilots get in these cool dogfights. It's what they call high noon shootouts. He who sees first wins. And so these systems are designed to be very, very integrated, giving pilots and personnel just massive situational awareness so that they can see things at a great distance, and they can fire these missiles from 100 miles away that are fire and forget. They can fire it and then fly away. And so it's very interesting because these are very sophisticated, very robust systems that are designed to identify aircraft through a whole host of ways. It can give a pilot a picture that will say, that is a Su-57 Russian fighter jet. I know it is that because of the electronic signatures, because of the radar signatures. This is why, this is where it's going. And so that's how it's designed. But when they're talking about this, the fact that these systems were designed to detect everything that we know about aren't, well, what are we talking about?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of the mystery. And I think you're right that you're going to have to adapt or evolve systems to try to specifically target that kind of stuff.